In this pod-slice summary of the Jordan Peterson podcast, Peterson and Boring, both influential figures in media and cultural discourse, delve into the formation of the Bent Key Kids platform, which aims to offer an alternative space for children's entertainment. This venture surfaced in reaction to media outlets, specifically Disney, being perceived as using their platforms to push certain socio-political agendas. Boring emphasizes that Bent Key is an antidote to this trend, promising to give kids content that is entertaining, supportive of traditional values, and free from sudden ideological transformations. They go on to analyze the complexity of drawing the line between political and non-political content. Peterson speculates that the deeper a story gets, the less it reflects temporary political dynamics, and the more it aligns with what he refers to as the eternal. Stories that accomplish this seem to balance the proximal, the temporally bound, and the ultimate religiousness. An excellent example of this is Snow White, which Peterson states is a timeless fairy tale falling in this category. The fairy tale has managed to remain relevant through many generations, indicating its timeless value. Boring stresses the necessity of shielding children from political content, citing the current trend of dragging juveniles into socio-political issues prematurely as an egregious intrusion into their innocence. In contrast, Bent Key aims to encapsulate societal values in a sense of wonder, joy, and imagination. He views the Bent Key launch as being political in itself because it is reacting to socio-political circumstances, but maintains that the content they offer does not propagate politics. Peterson further unravels the intricate relationships among societal organization, culture, and narratives with his interpretation of historian Mircea Eliade's theories. He posits that societies need to keep a balance between the horizontal, societal, and the vertical personal axes to avoid devolution into chaos. This balance, he argues, is encapsulated in great stories which manage to ground eternal values and wisdom into accessible, humanized concepts. Finally, they discuss the upcoming production of Snow White by Bent Key, where Brett Cooper, a decision that they both seem to view as intriguing and symbolic. In this discussion, Jeremy Boring and Jordan Peterson further delve into the political implications of Bent Key Kids entertainment content. They first unpack Boring's political leanings and how they may influence the fairy tale narratives in Bent Key's productions. Boring states that despite being conservative, he firmly believes in a version of American liberalism that values equality and individual rights, which he seeks to promote through Bent Key. Furthermore, Bent Key was founded by three prominent figures with diverging religious backgrounds: Boring, Ben Shapiro, and Caleb Robinson. Despite their substantial ideological differences, they've managed to forge a consensus-driven organization that avoids falling into a purity politics. They are united by a shared mission to provide an alternative for children's entertainment that transcends the divisive narrative and promotes timeless values. This diversity has been instrumental in shaping a fair and balanced creative decision-making process for Bent Key's content. Peterson acknowledges his initial apprehension about partnering with the Daily Wire, under which Bent Key operates. He was concerned that his content would become politicized. However, he attests that his concerns have since proved unfounded. Peterson praises the level of professionalism and openness to creative exploration he's experienced working with the Daily Wire. They also discuss the positive response to Bent Key's newly launched app, which has been live for over 24 hours at the time of the podcast. Despite criticisms in specific quarters, such as a Hollywood news outlet, the feedback from the target audience has been largely positive. Boring contends that while biases are inevitable, both positive and negative, they are working towards narratives that reflect a balance of views and timeless values. As the discussion continues, Jeremy Boring details his journey of becoming a producer. Growing up, he found inspiration in the desolate landscapes of West Texas. Despite initial dreams of acting, moving to Hollywood made him realize that he was, in essence, more a producer than an actor. Boring realized his experience in acting wasn't about performing on stage. Rather, it was about creating overall aesthetic experiences. This realization led him to reassess his dreams and realign his path. Boring underscores how crucial failures can be in shaping successful journeys. This sentiment is reflected when he speaks of detractors remarking on his previous failed ventures. He sees them not as moments of humiliation, but as the stepping stones to his current success. Peterson echoes this by reinforcing the importance of having a life vision, albeit with the understanding that it may not unfold precisely as planned. He explains that pursuing a broadly defined goal allows a person to gather information, sharpen their focus, and continuously modify their vision. Discussing Boring's transition to producing and his role at the Daily Wire, Peterson inquires about how Boring determined his specific talent for production. Boring talks about his childhood dreams of making good in Hollywood, how vague these were, and how they were refined into something substantial through experiences and failures, forming the bedrock of his role at the Daily Wire. Boring's production efforts have branched into various forms of entertainment. Despite the challenges and inevitable failures, they remain committed to shaping narratives that reflect a balance of views and timeless values, a belief that unifies the diverse team at Bent Key and the Daily Wire. The conversation continues with both Peterson and Boring emphasizing the instrumental role of failure in success, not as a humiliation, but as a learning curve. Peterson points out that failures should not deter people from trying again, reinforcing the idea that successful ventures often arise from numerous failed attempts. He also mentions that critics often misinterpret these journeys, lacking an understanding of entrepreneurial activity. Boring's journey further illustrates these key points. He describes how he had initial dreams of breaking into Hollywood and becoming an actor. After a series of botched attempts and failures, he took different career paths, gradually realizing his ultimate goal was actually producing, a sector where he could apply his creative skills better. The discussion takes an interesting twist when Peterson and Boring address the influence of politics on their work. While the assumption is that major players at the Daily Wire were primarily politically oriented, Boring affirms that entertainment, specifically dramatic culture, was his primary interest. Delving into his background, Boring recalls his attraction to Arthurian myth and Roman Britain, which deeply shaped his worldview. This obsession prompted him to undertake an ambitious project, adapting Stephen Lawhead's Pendragon Cycle, an influential young adult series. Boring admits this was a significant risk, as he embarked on the project without even owning the rights or having the author's permission. Years later, his commitment and resilience paid off, leading him back to his purpose of creating cultural content with the Daily Wire. The conversation shifts to audience expectations and the challenge of meeting them. While Boring acknowledges the importance of not betraying his audience's trust, he also understands that providing exactly what they ask for may not be what they genuinely want. This duality forms the crux of Boring's approach to content creation, where he's driven to provide content that his audience wants, even if it deviates from what they think they want. The talk then branches into how this approach also applies to political leadership. Peterson laments the trend where political leaders lose their vision by outsourcing their campaigns to consultants who convert their campaigns into generic political products. He urges leaders to tune into their audience's aspirations and help them make the next step forward. Boring and Peterson delve into the issues surrounding content creation in the Christian entertainment sector. They argue that explicit religious films can often become propaganda, pushing for a political agenda rather than engaging convictions and faith authentically. It underscores the importance of weaving narratives that captivate audiences with their sincere representation of religious themes. Looking at popular culture, Peterson reflects on contrasting themes found in commercially successful movies like Black Widow and Marvel's Tony Stark. He observes how these narratives quietly embed anti-woke sentiments, avoiding overt political commentary while still captivating audiences with compelling storytelling. Boring and Peterson's discussion underlines the notion that content that successfully taps into an audience's imagination transcends personal expression and achieves cultural resonance. As the conversation delves further into the realm of society and culture, Boring brings up a striking example of cultural change, the transformation of the stance on gay marriage in 4 years, from Barack Obama's 2 presidential terms. According to him, this dramatic change wasn't the result of politics, but of culture. Boring attributes this cultural shift to the influence of shows like Will and Grace, underlining the tremendous power culture holds, a power that even politicians have to bow to. In addressing the importance of culture, Boring and Peterson draw attention to the term Christian satire, exhibited by outlets such as the Babylon Bee, a notion that previously seemed incongruous. They acknowledge the bridging of the discordant worlds of traditional Christian Protestant American evangelism and the entertainment industry. Boring suggests his commitment to narrative has been due to his exposure to the story of God and redemption through Christ rather than institutional religion. This understanding gives him a unique perspective on the power of narrative. Peterson, in the process of writing his new book, We Who Wrestle with God, lays out the concept of perception of the world as a story. He argues that stories are not just modes of entertainment, but structures through which we perceive our world and rank order facts in terms of their value. Our fascination with stories arises from our desire to build our own narratives, orient ourselves in the world, and grasp the meta-narrative of our culture. The two then steer the discussion towards religion, discussing the incompatibility of the assumption that whoever has the most power rules the world with the principles of Christianity. They recall the biblical narrative of Moses being forbidden from entering the Promised Land simply due to his use of force. The reference reinforces the idea that compelling actions are discouraged in Christianity, and instead invitation and enticement, the art of telling the right story, is encouraged. Finally, the conversation between Peterson and Boring touches upon the concept of free choice in Judeo-Christian tradition, which is regarded as key to individual responsibility and destiny. Highlighting the importance of refusing to deify nature is demonstrated through the story of Elijah from the Bible. They infer that God, according to the tradition, is not aligned with natural phenomena, but lies in the still small voice within, underlining the significance of conscience. They believe that maintaining this freedom of conscience is vital. In discussing talent recruitment for the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring offers an interesting insight. He reveals that hiring creative talent for children's entertainment was surprisingly easier than hiring for general entertainment. This he attributes to the moral qualms creatives in children's media have against weaving elements that may be seen as inappropriate, such as transgender characters, into content for young audiences. This sentiment of need for preserving the innocence of children was strong enough to make seasoned writers and producers from giants like Disney and DreamWorks jump ship. Boring declares his company to be a challenging place to work due to the hostile environment created by external forces such as major social media platforms and a government antagonistic to their business. Despite the pressures and challenges, Boring emphasizes the importance of innovation and the ability to rise above past successes to keep creating new ones. He starkly reminds his employees that resting on past achievements will not sustain their progress, but rather may result in their downfall. Dr. Peterson discusses the idea of risk, sharing the case of a client who was excessively afraid of death to the extent it dominated her life. Through a series of therapy sessions, including a confronting episode of witnessing an embalming process, she was able to recalibrate her perception of fear. Peterson draws a parallel to the initiation rites in some societies, where individuals undergo significantly frightening experiences to help them discern between what is truly awful and what is merely uncomfortable. Connecting the theme of risk to Boring's discussion on challenges of working in the Daily Wire, Peterson implies that by operating in a hostile environment and being exposed to real risks, the Daily Wire team could achieve this calibration, enhancing their resilience and creativity in the process. In this conversation, Peterson addresses the concept of risk and innovation in professional environments, noting the unconventional approach Daily Wire has towards tackling new projects. Acknowledging that the probability of failure is high due to multiple challenges, he applauds the team's ability to accept and integrate these risks in their professional processes. Jeremy Boring, in the conversation, expresses the importance of being grounded, not just in the face of success, but also under adversarial threats and attacks. He discusses his belief that bitter experiences often hide opportunities within and emphasizes the need for a sense of humor and playfulness in dealing with harsh situations. Dr. Peterson delves into the psychology behind fear and distress, presenting the case of a client who successfully recalibrated her perception of fear. He draws parallels to initiation rites in other cultures and suggests that these types of confrontational experiences can help individuals discern between true danger and mere discomfort. Next, Peterson presents his thoughts on the adversarial tension that companies like Daily Wire experience. Contrary to popular belief, he believes that this tension may not only be indispensable for achieving radical success, but could also be a precondition for it. The topic then shifts to the shaping of Boring's worldview. He gives credit to American author Stephen Lawhead, his vivid storytelling, and the impactful film Braveheart for instilling in him an understanding of faith and purpose unique from the stereotypical portrayal of Jesus. Lastly, they discuss the inspiration behind Boring's current endeavor in Europe. They delve into themes like adventure and risk-taking, and how embracing these often arduous experiences can lead to an enriching and fulfilling life. Jordan Peterson uses the Abrahamic story to drive his point, emphasizing that a full encounter with life isn't just about happiness, but also tackling death and hell head-on. The story of Abraham leaving his comfort zone and taking on hardships and adventures resonates strongly with Boring's own life choices and personal experiences. Boring admits that even though his current project is the most strenuous thing he's undertaken, it brings him immense satisfaction and happiness. In conclusion, Peterson and Boring bring to the fore the idea that adversarial tension, risks, and bitter experiences in life are not necessarily stairways to downfall, but could be potential catalysts for radical success and personal evolution if embraced with the right spirit. They emphasize mental recalibration, acknowledging fear, embracing adversities, and maintaining faith as key elements to thriving in challenging professional environments and leading an enriching life. Navigating the realms of choices, consequences, and grace, both Dr. Jordan Peterson and Jeremy Boring delve into their personal experiences and reflections. Boring shares a powerful anecdote about his brother's struggles with addiction. Despite sharing similar circumstances, Boring managed to steer clear of addiction, a distinction he doesn't entirely ascribe to better choices. He believes there are unseen mechanisms at play, like a metaphorical switch in the brain that varies from person to person. He credits divine grace for helping him avoid the pitfalls that his brother tragically fell into. Boring admits to pondering over why he ended up on his current path, unable to pinpoint anything apart from divine grace. While the choices he's made have contributed to where he is today, he's wary of taking credit for them. Instead, Boring advocates for a critical yet appreciative approach toward the societal institutions that have helped shape our world. He feels it's our collective responsibility to restore and rebuild these societal edifices, a belief he traces back to narratives in popular culture like the film Braveheart and the Pendragon series by Stephen R. Lawhead. Paralleling the characters' sacrifices, Boring believes it's not our prerogative to save the world, but rather to do our part towards betterment. He recounts his interactions with Andrew Breitbart, arguing against his friend's book title, Righteous Indignation, Excuse Me While I Save the World. Boring underscores that each of us has a part to play in God's work, but we must not mistakenly believe ourselves to be God. In his reflections, Boring expresses a sense of humility before God and a responsibility for one's actions. This balance, according to him, has allowed him to lead a content life amidst successes and failures alike. He also acknowledges the unique struggles that success brings while recognizing its rewards. As they conclude, Peterson expresses his anticipation for Boring's upcoming ventures, notably his works in children's entertainment through Bentkey and the promising release of documentaries through Daily Wire. Both individuals express mutual admiration and commitment towards their collaborative efforts thus far, maintaining an enthusiasm for any future endeavors. They emphasize being awake, the necessity of vigilance, and openness to the precariousness of existence in the professional realm. They also look forward to the revamped Snow White project and its potential impact in the face of Disney's 100th anniversary. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of The Pod Slice.